So eating less processed food, like autoimmune or not, that's such a vital piece of long-term lasting weight loss and overall health. But I'm also a realist, and so I'm not going to tell you 100%. Like that's not sustainable either. I asked for a 90-10 rule, or if we can keep 90% of our diet clean, I want you to have some wiggle room. I want you to have some fun. 10%, that's all your junk food, whatever it is. Suppressing your appetite when you're trying to eat more is counterproductive for some people. And then the opportunity of resensitizing is good for the fact that it'll potentially, maybe you won't need as much of a dose, as high of a dose in the future. But it is your call. So you've been on Ozempic. How long have you been on that for?
I've been back on for probably 4 months, and I'd say on and off for the last year.
Okay. And seeing little results the entire time, or this more
So
recent?
at the beginning I probably lost relatively quick 10 pounds, but I had an issue with just like general nausea and not feeling awesome. So I kept the dose low. And then I went off and I went back on, and now I'm on 1 milligram, but that it's not doing, it probably is curbing some of my appetite, but I can eat very normally.
Okay, so you almost feel a little kind of resistant to the effect of it.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, you've been stuck on the plateau. So do you happen to know how many calories you think you average?
So I just called you guys today. So I was not prepared to track any of that. But my guess is that it's a very normal, probably like 1700 to 2000 calorie diet, like super normal situation where, and I work out every day too. So yeah, it's probably not a slim amount.
Yeah. By the way, if today feels overwhelming just because you just signed up today, they're supposed to wait a week to book you out, but
Well,
just
that
let
was
us know.
travel schedule. So I said no.
Uh,
Sunday.
that you're trying to dive head first. Yeah, I think with that intake, it's interesting because you've been on the med, you're not feeling the effects, you're not losing weight. I would think a reset is probably a good starting point for you. For two reasons: to get that metabolism faster, even though it's not super low your intake, we can get it a little bit higher. But I think the other part of it is there's some obvious resistance that's going on right now. If you're feeling the actual effect of the 1 milligram not suppressing your appetite as much, tirzepatide is a different medication, but it's still acting on GLP-1 receptors plus GIP. So this could be a good opportunity the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's probably going to be fast for you because you're not that low, maybe 2 weeks, 2, 3 at the most. And then we get through that, we get your intake to a nice, like as high as we can. And then bam, you start the tirzepatide. You've had more time to resensitize to the receptors being hit in general. And then we roll.
Okay. I don't love the 3 week break. I was hoping for transition.
So let me add, it's your call, right? I can't give anybody medical advice. So it's totally your call. And what I do is I'm walking you through sort of scenarios and what it looks like. So you can do a straight transition if you want, and you may do fine. The goal of the reset, though, is to get you eating more. And we do that for the reason of getting your metabolism to the highest point that we can before we get into some real good weight loss that we're going to see some fat loss in the future. A lot of times, suppressing your appetite when you're trying to eat more is counterproductive for some people. And then the opportunity of resensitizing is good for the fact that it'll potentially, maybe you won't need as much of a dose, as high of a dose in the future. But it is your call, and we will work with you in either way. And I'll answer as many questions as I can to help guide you so that you can make the best choice for yourself on that regard. Okay, cool. So now fasting, right? So we know the goal is to get to that 48. So if you are in a reset, we're going to stick with just intermittent fasting, and everything else in the protocol stays the same. It's just you just don't go deep in the fasting yet because of the reason of trying to get your intake up and get the metabolism faster. For everybody else that's not in a reset, then yes, you are trying to get yourself to that flow stage. So you saw the stages there on the welcome form. Stage one is your intermittent. That's your 8 hour eating window. So first calories in, last calories in. We call that your eating window for the day. Intermittent is doing that every day. That's pretty easy. That's not going to be enough to really move the needle. It's not going to be enough to really get those receptors on your cells more sensitive. And that's why we push it to the stage two, which is 24 hours. And that's like a dinner to dinner thing. And once you can do that, say twice in a week, and you feel really comfortable with that, then you are at the next stage, is the big one, right? The long one where we go from dinner to 2 dinners away. Now, you don't jump straight to that, right? Maybe the first time because this is always an interesting time, right? Where you go to, and some of you have never done this before, right? Where you go to bed and you haven't eaten all day since the dinner before. It's a little weird the first time. You feel really empty, but it's a good feeling. And even in the morning, if you wake up, if you're ravenously hungry and you want to start eating, that's still fine because you just broke a record for yourself. And when you wake up the next morning, you're already going to be at 34 probably hours. Once you get to that point where you can do that one big long one, that's no longer twice a week. It's just once a week now. And every week you're trying to increase that length until you get around to that 48. And we're going to be working with you. If we need to go less, if we need to go more, like things will come up and we'll let you know. But 48 is that arbitrary goal that we start everybody at, and then we modify it if necessary. So the big takeaway is you are progressing yourself as quickly or as slowly as you desire to. This allows you to work within your own excitement and comfort level. This allows you to take into consideration your own stress levels, and your body's going to give us whatever amount of resistance it's going to give us. And then I'm going to be here to guide you if we need to. If you feel like you want to dive headfirst, go for it. The worst thing that's going to happen is you don't actually make it to your goal, but anything that you beat is always going to be better than your last fast. We're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about supplements here in a second, but any fasting related questions, progressing yourself through the fasting. Yes, Jessica.
Working out. So I try to work out with a trainer and do weightlifting and functional training 3 days a week, but he has me doing like cardio stuff. So should we not do it on the days we're going to fast, like the 24-hour fasts?
Yeah, you definitely, in the beginning, it's such a stressor on your body already just to do the long fasting that you don't want to add more stress. Walking's okay. Technically, walking is still a stressor, but it's such a low stressor that you're pretty much burning pure fat. So I'm okay with walking, but anything out above walking, that's definitely an advanced technique that in the future is really nice to be able to do that, but not now. Not now. Yeah. So definitely time your more intense workouts for outside of your long fasting days.
Can we do a scenario?
Yeah.
So if I start, for instance, if I must do my shot in the morning and that's when I want to do my fast day. So tomorrow I'm going to fast. I would just walk tomorrow. And then so Thursday I wouldn't eat till around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And I normally work out in the mornings. I wouldn't want to work out again till Friday. Is that right? Weightlifting?
As long,
Sorry.
yeah. So no, that's fine. If you ate dinner the night before, I'm okay with you weightlifting in the morning. You still have carbs, but if I don't want you to not get your workout in, but we want to do our best to avoid that. We want to do our best to plan it so that your weight training is not in that fasting window.
Okay.
So as long as it's not in the long fasting window, the intermittent, I'm not too worried about.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's just that long fast because when you're weightlifting, you're burning carbs and your carbs are stored in your glycogen and liver. You only have about 18 hours of stored carbs. So once you get past 18 hours of fasting, you don't have any of the preferred fuel source to fuel your weight training. Okay. And your body will survive. It'll adapt, but it's a great demand to ask of your body. And we're just not there yet.
Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So food, right? So my philosophy is getting you guys being able to make your own choices, create your own menu. I find that this is the most sustainable approach so that you don't feel stuck. Plus, you guys each have your own individual backgrounds, right? If you have an autoimmune disease, you probably already know that you have, unfortunately, less wiggle room. You're going to have to eat more strict. Although I've seen a lot of variety between each individual on an autoimmune basis. We have some rules, right? We follow those rules and then we modify individually if we need to. So eating less processed food, like autoimmune or not, that's such a vital piece of long-term lasting weight loss and overall health. But I'm also a realist. And so I'm not going to tell you 100%, like that's not sustainable either. I asked for the 90-10 rule, where if we can keep 90% of our diet clean, I want you to have some wiggle room. I want you to have some fun. 10%, that's all your junk food, whatever it is. That includes alcohol because alcohol is not ideal. But if you feel like it is important for you, then you absolutely can. Just keep that in your 10%. And the goal would be to minimize that as much as obviously possible because alcohol really does work against you. And this is where you've heard me talk about paleo Mediterranean. It's a great representation of really what we can call the anti-processed food diet. And the only modification to that, right, now that we got the structure, we're just trying to choose less processed foods, is we do want to go keto. Not for life, but if we can go keto, if we can go low carb for this first portion, this first 2 to 3 months, that really will, when paired with the fasting, That's a powerful response from the body. And, what I see for a lot of people is within 2 to 3 months, I can get you eating carbs again and still losing weight. That's the goal. Worst thing that happens is we introduce carbs then and you start gaining weight again. No, we take you off and we try again 2 months later, right? This is a constant test with your body to see where it's at. Insulin sensitivity, like you hear people talking about, oh, you can eat carbs and lose weight. It's only about calories. And no, you have to get rid of carbs. The truth is, if you're insulin sensitive, you can have carbs. It's just people don't understand that. So when somebody says, oh, it's all about calories, they don't understand hormones. They don't understand insulin resistance. When you're insulin resistant, no, it's so much more than calories. But once we get you sensitive again, then it is more about calories, right? And the calories take care of themselves when you keep those insulin levels lower. So it's really nice. And that's what we're striving for. Outside of that, the same kind of logical concepts, like in case you're wondering about the produce and the meat, if the budget allows for it, organic produce will make a difference. Autoimmune, same thing. There could be some sensitivities to it. So ideally, you're choosing for that if possible, if your budget allows for it. If not, I still see people get great results. So I don't want that to freak you out or make it a mandatory thing for you. But obviously, if we can budget, then we want to do that to the best of our ability so that we can get the best results. And then breaking the long fast is its own little thing. I had that little section on the welcome to form for breaking the long fast, which really is just taking your time, taking 24 hours. I love bone broth to break the long fast, and then doing small, easy to digest meals. And it really does take a full 24 hours to break that long fast, as you guys will see when you get there.
This is a true statement, but I have been keto-esque for several years, obviously not too good because I was heavy. But ever since I've been on these medications, I focus mainly, I guess I'm a more carnivore-ish right now, but I have issues with eating anything with fat. So if I eat, I know when I was on keto, it's like back, when was it big? 2019, pre-menopause. It's just, I really have issues with eating fat. I know in one of your videos, you said, don't sit down and eat a chicken breast, have an avocado with it. So what do you recommend if I'm very sensitive, since I've been on these medications, to anything that is high fat?
Ideally, we want to figure out why and get your body more tolerable to fats. What happens like when you eat a higher fatty meal?
I just get real nauseous. It doesn't even sound good to eat. Like I'd have to almost force it down.
Okay.
Which I never have been like that before. I would eat down a ribeye, no problem. But now just all that fat it just makes me nauseous.
It's tough. My camera disconnected, so I'm going to plug that back in. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that it just went away.
And then in regards to that, I have started introducing more whole food carbs. Like I would never eat fruit and never eat vegetables, but I have started introducing like blueberries, raspberries, and a small amount of strawberries because they're lower on the glycemic index. So I have reintroduced those. Is that still okay? Because my carb count right now my total carbs is probably around 60 or 70, and my net carbs are around 30 to 40 high. 40 is very high.
That's great. No, I'm okay with that. And berries are my favorite fruits. They really are, even though you can make them pretty sweet, which is nice. And they taste really good when you add sweeteners, if you do that kind of stuff, but they're really low. They're really low on actual usable carbs, as you've seen, and they're very high in micronutrients. So I'm totally okay with berries.
Okay.
And going back to the fat question. Yeah, that's tricky because when you go low carb, that only leaves you with fat and protein, and you can only eat so much protein. So if you're lowering your carb intake, you're not gonna make it up your calories and protein. So it has to come from fat, or you're going to be under eating, which is another problem.
Right.
So I think what you're going to have to do is slowly increase your fat intake over time and develop this tolerance to it. What I'm trying to figure out is, do you think it's more of like a mental aversion? Somebody
since I've started tirzepatide, there's like certain things, which is a good thing because thinking of eating fast food right now literally turns my stomach. So I can't smell it when my family brings it home. And I'm seeing the same thing with the fattier meats that I always used to eat. I haven't been able to as easily as I used to. But yeah, I guess we can just try to introduce maybe smaller amounts in.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, because we have to get the calories from somewhere. Mm-hmm. What about in the meantime, to help you get the density, get the calories, avocados, nuts, olives? How are you with those kind of foods?
I don't like olives. I don't like avocado. I can eat like guacamole when I take pico, which is just tomatoes. I don't get like, it's just tomatoes and spices. I can mix that with an avocado and eat it.
Oh, great. Do that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Avocado is amazing. I mean, we know this. So
Right.
definitely if you have to do that every day, obviously don't get bored of it, but you can try different picos with it. But yeah, I think that's going to be probably a big source for you. Cause if you don't like olives, there's not nuts, and then avocado oil and olive oil for your dressings is another source. If you like
that's
salads.
what I use.
Yep. You can really do heavy on those. And I think if you do that, I think you'll be fine. And then as far as going back to the fattier meats, I think a fatty piece of meat is great every now and then, because you do want some saturated fat. When you look at your total fat breakdown, about a third should come from saturated and 2/3 of your fat intake should come from the other categories. Nobody underdoes saturated, right? If you eat, unless you're a vegetarian, you're going to get your saturated requirements. Freaking everything that's delicious is the meats, the dairy. The problem is getting enough of the other ones, because that's a smaller category. So you're going to really have to push that and then incorporate a small piece, I think, of the fattier meats and work your way up.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation for the macro countdown or breakdown? Was it 70, 30, 10? Or that doesn't add up. 60, 30, 10?
First of all, no, not per se, because the same concept of not overthinking it and saying we have to hit this target. Same thing for the concept of not counting calories. But if you like a structured, your carb intake is somewhere around that 10 to 15. Your protein intake is around 30, 35 would be great for your protein, and the rest would be fat.
Okay.
But it's loose, right? It doesn't have to be. The other thing with protein is counting your grams is easier. Your target for protein would just be shooting for your current weight, in between your current weight and your target weight in grams of protein per day. That's the formula.